Cut down day here in Jacksonville and everywhere around the league. I'll go through what is the 53 at this point in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is happening, folks? Welcome to Locked On Jaguars. On the day the teams trimmed their roster down to 53, I have to let you know today's episode of Locked On Jaguars is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. I know y'all locked in today to all of the goings on around the NFL, especially here with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I want to name this stuff real quick for you. I'm going to go through and let you know who the Jaguars let go. Here's a direct from Jaguars PR. Defensive lineman Israel Antoine was waived. All of these were waived unless I say otherwise. Wide receiver Kevin Austin Jr., outside linebacker Rashad Berry, wide receiver Jeff Cotton Jr., cornerback Xavier Crawford, offensive lineman Coy Cronk, offensive lineman Nick Ford, wide receiver Willie Johnson was waived / injured. Greg Jr. was waived, the cornerback, safety Ayo Oyelola, tight end Garrett Prince, defensive tackle Jay Tufili, and we'll talk about him a little bit more. Offensive lineman Darrell Williams was waived, and defensive tackle Raekwon Williams. Also, Sargent, the running back, was the last one to get released, and that gets them to the 53. Right now, they have 2 kickers on the roster. So that means the 53 is pretty much set. There aren't any true surprises. It's set for right now. Of course, the Jaguars have waiver priority, and that means that they can go out and get anybody off the waiver, anybody that's on waivers that they want to claim. The thing about that is if you claim waivers, you have to take the contract as it already exists. So there's a lot of people talking about Alex Leatherwood, the possibility of that, who was let go by the Raiders. They would have to eat up the rest of his contract and absorb that into their cap, as opposed to if they let him clear waivers and then they can sign him to a minimum deal or whatever they negotiate. But there's some things I want to discuss here on this show in particular. We're going to revisit things from time to time. So I know folks are all positive and they're all sunshine and rainbows and they're ready for this season to start and they don't want to talk about the past. Well, then you need to get your own podcast, because what I do here is when things occur, I speak on them. When they occur, I never, like, for instance, I never say the 2021 draft was terrible like the day after the draft, right? I won't do that. And the reason why I won't do that is because I don't know if it's terrible. The only reason or justification I would have to say at that time, if it's bad, is if they just didn't pick guys that I wanted. And I think that's unfair because I don't do the work that the scouts do. I don't understand, like, the player development aspect of it. Like right now, Tim Jones. Tim Jones was somebody that they had in player development. Nobody knew about Tim Jones. They did. They saw his progress. They knew. So, therefore, they probably, I told you, before one preseason game played, he was listed as the backup behind Zay Jones. That means he was in the top 6. Everyone thinks that Tim Jones just somehow ran all the way like it is when you conceive a child. Like, he ran all the way through. He was one of a million to get to the front, and he made his way to the – no, he was listed as the backup to Zay Jones. He was in the top 6 before one preseason game even played. That means they had an idea about him based on his work ethic and his development, correct? So you don't ever know what a team has in development. So I'll never say that a draft is bad. I don't know if they're drafting dudes because somebody's contract is up and I give them the benefit of the doubt. But there's one caveat to it. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but when the day comes, a year later that guy's cut and he's not in your roster, I'm gonna bring it up. J2 Philly. Here's a tweet that I said earlier, and I'm not gonna make this all about social media, but I'm gonna give you an idea of why I don't think people listen very well sometimes, and maybe they don't understand and they misunderstand exactly what I'm saying. J2 Philly, 4th round pick, first pick of the 4th round last year out of USC. I said this should have been easy scouting when Amon-Ra St. Brown was picked 6 picks later, and he had 90 catches last year, and the Jaguars needed wide receivers, right? The Jaguars needed wide receivers so bad they kept bringing guys in here last summer. It was like a relay team. Somebody passing the baton. Every week they brought a dude in here, and he was in the starting lineup. So folks can't tell me they didn't need wide receivers, right? I think John Shipley even said it last year before the preseason that the following draft, the number 1 priority would be a wide receiver. People knew the Jags needed receiver help. So what I said was this should have been easy scouting when they cut J2 Philly today, when they waived him, and that other kid caught 90 balls. I said that should have been easy scouting. Here's what I mean by easy scouting. That's a term that I actually learned from guys who were in the business, 30-year scouts. When I'm sitting there asking about players and they say that's easy scouting, what they're basically talking about is guys that are in the top 50, players that were 5-star recruits that go to Alabama and you watch them play well in competition, other players at Power 5 schools. And if we're talking about it from a regional perspective, we mean what they meant was the scout in that area, if he's in that area, first of all, he's in that region, if he's the West Coast guy, and then if he's not only the West Coast dude, he's at one school, and you got 2 draftable players in the top 150, which both of these guys were. And one guy gets cut, and the other guy has 90 balls, is considered the number 2 receiver on his team. That should have been easy. It should have been easy because it was right in your face. Now, it doesn't mean the scout missed it. It could be very well that the scout came back and had the information and wasn't heard. That happens all the time. So I'm not blaming the scouts when I say that. There was the Athletic has talked about it. I heard rumors of it that the coaching staff last year basically said he didn't like scouts. He didn't like scouts. He said they didn't know what they were doing. So I'm just wondering if there's somebody somewhere jumping up and down saying, I told him. See, these are the things that continuously make the Jaguars bad. So somebody else tweeted me and said, it happens to everybody. I don't cover everybody. And everybody isn't the Jaguars has been perpetually bad. The Patriots haven't drafted well, but they got 6 Super Bowl rings. And you can say, well, Tom Brady. They weren't drafting well when they had Tom Brady, but they got 6 Super Bowl rings. They found a way to overcome it. Jacksonville hasn't. This is about the fans. This is for you. I have repeatedly said I'm tired of fans having this hangover every Sunday because of just the lack of direction. Hopefully, I think it's fixed now. The optimism is that I believe it's fixed. I ain't said nothing about last year's draft but positive things, and I ain't said nothing but positive things about this year's draft. But you can't help when you see that happen. That's bothersome. And the only reason I brought up the fact that wide receiver was a position of need was it could have been that someone says, well, they didn't need Amon-Ra St. Brown, so they took a chance on J2 Philly. No, they did need a wide receiver. They picked him because he thought he was a better player. They needed a wide receiver worse than they needed a defensive lineman last year in the draft. Let's just say they missed. They missed. And the importance of that is the easy scouting part is picking in the first 2 or 3 rounds. The harder it gets, as you get further and further away from the first pick, that's actually the scouts' territory. That's when they earn their money more than a coach who has been coaching all year and just watch tape the last 2 weeks. That's why I say it's easy scouting, because those guys know and you have to listen to them. Hopefully now the Jaguars are on track and they are listening to them. Compounded with this, the year before, somebody put this up and I didn't realize how. I knew it was bad. They said, well, when C.J. Henderson was taken, they needed an offensive lineman, so they didn't take Tristan Wirfs. True. When Kayvon Chason was taken, Justin Jefferson was on the board. True. And they said something about Laviska Shenault when he was taken. There was somebody else that's all world that was on the board. So you're looking at Wirfs, who's an all pro, Jefferson, who's all world. So the difference is not that those guys turned out better than the guys the Jaguars picked. That's obvious. What makes it worse is the Jaguars lack depth right now, right? According to everyone, the biggest thing about the team is they're good. They can have a chance to be good, but they don't have depth. That's why the preseason showed you. Well, here's what happens. When you draft a guy and he doesn't pan out and he doesn't become a superstar, but at the very least, he can become a depth piece and be a productive member of your team, like DeJuan Smoot, that's a good thing. Even if he doesn't turn out to be better than the player that you passed up. That means you have the depth, right? But when you draft a guy like C.J. Henderson, he's gone. He's not even on the team anymore, and you made the wrong pick. He can't help you at all. Shenault is gone. He's not even on the team, and he ain't depth. He can't even be your fourth receiver or your fifth guy. He's gone, and you could have had an all-pro. When you talk about Chason, maybe gone soon, and you talk about an all-pro that was picked up. So you're not even talking about missing on a player who's not as good as the guy you took. You're talking about missing on an all-pro, and the guy you took isn't even on your team anymore, and he can't help you at all. That's the point. That's what makes it worse. It's not that every team in the league drafts a guy in front of a guy who ends up being better. But at least you get something out of that player. Don't you? But when you do that and you pass up on an all-pro and you take another guy and he's not even on your team, and then when you ask what your weakness is and they say lack of depth, that cuts differently. And if anybody doesn't understand that, I can't help you. I'm going to tell you what I think the Jaguars need from this point moving forward and whether or not it's going to be good enough for the team to be successful and win this season. These are all questions that we actually have to answer this year. Look at their roster, talk about where they're weak, what they need, and if it's actually going to be good enough this season. I'll do all of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. I got to tell you about PrizePicks, our sponsor for today's show. Listen, man, if I say I'm waking up and I'm taking Patrick Mahomes to throw for more than 320 passing yards and Derrick Henry to rush for less than 85 yards and Cooper Kupp to score more than a half a touchdown and Tyreek Hill to catch less than 3.5 passes, that's what I'm choosing. And I go on PrizePicks and I see what their value is. And I'm going to beat it or I'm not going to beat it, right? How does it work? This is what you do. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they will go score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. That's what you do. That's what it's all about. This is what you have to do, man. This is absolutely fun. I went through this, and I think I'm pretty good at this, right? I think I'm pretty good at picking daily fantasy stuff, right? So these are your entries. This is what they're called. They're called entries, and their player projections, and it's about more or less. Are you going to get more or less than their PrizePicks has suggested? Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code, which is Locked On, at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. And you guys didn't forget to join us here on Locked On Jaguars because you make us your first listen, and it's your team every day, and we thank you for doing that. Also, you can please like and subscribe and follow us on all platforms wherever you get your podcast, including the YouTube page. Man, I got all fired up today, man, because one thing about me, and everyone knows this, is I don't drop credentials. I don't sit here and tell you who my sources are. I don't brag about the people that I know. A lot of times when I come up with these opinions, man, it's because I've talked to folks and do research. There are a few folks that they don't want to hear that because they come out off the dribble, they come in to just do some hating. And generally, those are the people you see me run off. I don't need that kind of interaction because this site is really for and this podcast is really for Jag fans. It's for the city of Jacksonville. I've told people that I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a Jaguars fan as much as I'm a Jacksonville, Florida fan. And the people here love the team. I love the fact that the team is here, but I try to be as objective as I can on the podcast and just speak the truth. What I don't do is I'm not going to beat the team up for every little move that they make if it's something that I don't agree with. I don't do that. Because if it turns out that it works and it's successful, then you're standing there with egg on your face and then you did all that hooping and hollering for nothing. What I do is say, wait and see. I'll wait and see. And if it doesn't turn out, I'll point it out. There have been a lot of little missteps in the past that when you add them up all together, create a big mess that the Jaguars have been in. And I don't want this team to continue to be that way. I really, really don't. I don't want this team to continue to be getting in their own way. I did a show last night on a panel, and I actually made this point on the panel when someone asked me, what's the best thing about the team right now? And I said a couple of things. They're competent. I think they're headed in the right direction. It appears that the staff and the coaching staff, the behind the scenes, the off-field staff and the coaching staff are on the same page. And it feels like every single player believes in the direction of the coaching. And then the other big thing is, I said, I think they got the head coach right. And I think they got a very, very talented quarterback. And that tandem reminds you of the Roethlisberger, Tomlins. It reminds you of the Pete Carroll, well, what used to be the Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson. It reminds you of the Belichick, Brady. It's the Tony Dungy, Peyton Manning. It's all of these things where you've had a successful coach and a successful quarterback, and they're together. That's what I think is being built here. I have given Trent Baalke more credit for changing the athletic profile of this team and said, hey, he may not have done a bad job all the way around. But it doesn't mean that you can't point little things out, right? It doesn't mean that you can't suggest that there was a chance that things could have been done differently. The Jaguars can't fix everything, right? So I think their starters are good. I believe the offense, even without what you would consider a normal alpha receiver, has a chance to be good because of play design, the play calling, as well as how well the installation of the offense has gone. And then even the pieces sort of fit where you don't necessarily need that one dude that's just off the charts. You just need a bunch of really good professional football players, especially at the skill position. And I think they've done that. I think they've addressed the offensive line. It's never too late to start. I've been critical in the past that they didn't have enough guys in development. And you see that now with their lack of depth. But it doesn't mean that the moves that they made are bad moves. The moves they made are good moves, and it's a step in the right direction. It just might not happen for this team as they might have to play perfectly. It's a chance that they really they're going to struggle with depth if they start having injuries. And that's where you take a look back and say, dang it, they had a chance to fix that depth. But there are too many guys that they've drafted over the last 3 years that aren't here anymore. Yeah, Laviska didn't turn out to be a number one, but you would have hoped, even if he doesn't turn out to one, I keep using Dewan Smoot as the example. You'd hope that he ended up at least being a number 3 or number 4, and he's not even that. That's the point. The point is you have to get something in return for the guys that you chose. So what do they need? They need depth along the defensive line. It might be priority number 1. Why do they need depth? Because the guy they picked in the first pick of the 4th round last year had to get cut because he wasn't good enough. That's the point of my discussion. Some people say they may need a 6 wide receiver who will play special teams. Okay. You don't want a guy that you pick in the 2nd round to have to play special teams, but a guy that you picked in the 2nd round wouldn't have to play special teams if he was good enough to be the 3rd receiver. You can get the guy that's playing the 4th receiver position to play special teams. That's the point. They may need to address depth along the offensive line. Why? It's because they didn't have enough guys in development from years past. That's the point. Hopefully, these are things that are alleviated. These are things that won't continue to happen. and they'll be good enough moving forward. Like at the beginning of next year, some of the guys that may not have fulfilled the promise that they have in terms of being a starter or a frontline player this year may be able to be the depth that they'll need next year as they add more talent to the team. That is all I'm talking about. When you're a bad team, there are people, James Robinson is good enough. Why did you take a running back? Because you're a bad team. When you're a bad team, you need more than one running back. You need as much talent as you can get everywhere. And if the Jags finish in the middle of the road this year, you can't rest on your laurels. You have to go out and add some more players. So we talked about where they may still be a little bit weak. Now we have to guess, now that we know what the roster is, where exactly can they be at the end of this season? And how will the rest of this, the beginning of the season, go as you go through the schedule and whatever it is, whoever the Jaguars have to play and go through the schedule? I'm going to tell you what I think they'll do. I'm going to tell you how I believe they'll play, how they'll move from this point forward, and it's probably a little bit more optimistic than a lot of you guys think. I'll tell you that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. I want to know, are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive stoned? I'm just going to put it bluntly. What's the worst thing that can happen? You end up driving below the speed limit? It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is your reaction times slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, and you'll get a DUI. All right, man, we're rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars on 53-man cut down day. I was pretty accurate on my my choices for who I thought was going to make the team that we went through and that we did a couple of weeks ago for the current Jaguars 53-man roster. You can check out any Jaguars depth chart or go to jaguars.com and you'll have that too, where you'll get all of the names. We went through it a couple of weeks ago. Right now they have 3 running backs. I think Jamal Agnew provides a lot of versatility to where they can do certain things with him, and plus with the way that they're going to play. I would probably go out and add another running back. I really would. I'd probably go out and get someone, and I'm thinking more along the lines of pass protection and just being a veteran guy. I get another running back, and maybe if he's really, really versatile, who can get some short yards and who can catch. But mainly, I'd be worried about pass protection just in case we got guys hurt or injured. Touch up I don't think you're going to find a tight end on the market that's worth anything right now. I think the Jaguars are pretty happy with the group that they have. I think they're happy with C.J. Beathard being their backup quarterback. Offensive line may need to be touched up a little bit if there's something in development. Like I said, the one that everyone keeps talking about is the Leatherwood kid that was former first-round pick that was released by the Raiders. I think he's going to clear waivers because nobody wants to eat that salary. Apparently, according to Ian Rappaport, they tried to trade him to 32 teams, and they got no's from everybody. So I do believe that I told you guys yesterday I thought Caleb Vaughn was going to make it, and apparently he has, but so did Deshaun Dixon, as well as my man Jones, so Jamil Jones. So he made it as well. Rudy Ford being let go yesterday didn't surprise me. Somebody did ask me today, so what happened to Rudy Ford? I heard Rudy Ford wasn't even talking to people in the building no more. I heard Rudy Ford wasn't speaking to players, was unhappy with the fact that he was a special teams only guy, and that's where they saw him. He wanted to actually play more from the line of scrimmage. I know that, you want to play, you want to compete, and then you want to put yourself to get some money too when you're a free agent. So he'll get picked up by someone. Monteric Brown make it. Greg Jr. didn't. A lot of the young people that you see that did make it will be back on the practice squad. So what do I think it means for Jacksonville? I think Jacksonville is super competitive this year. I think they win. I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're going to win more than half their games. So that would be 9 out of 17, right? That doesn't mean that I think they're going to cap at 9. I think they have a chance to win more than 9. I think if they go 10-7 with the way this division is this year, 10-7 might win the division. I think they go 5-1 in the division, and it's not gloom and doom like folks think just because you point out things that where they could be just a little bit better. But I think they've recovered nicely. They've recovered nicely. There have been a lot of teams that have messed up past drafts that have been able to fix it. One of the reasons the Jaguars can overcome it is because, well, they pick first, right? So even if they miss some players in the middle rounds, or even if they miss some players just 3 years ago in the first round, one of the things that helps you overcome that is you're getting the pick of the litter the next 2 years, where you're getting the best physical freak. And guys like that have a tendency to be able to help you turn your team around real quick. The fact that they had a lot of salary cap space and were able to go out and get a lot of infrastructural parts, even if they had to overpay for them, like people think they overpaid for Christian Kirk. The fact that they were able to do that, but the main thing that they did is they got the continuity and they have the stability in the front office between those guys and the coaching staff, where everyone is on the same page. No one's playing CYA, cover your you know what. No one's pointing a finger at anybody else. Everyone is being accountable. It just feels a little bit differently. It really, really does. So there are people that'll get on me for being negative, but then there are also people that'll get on me for being too positive and too much about sunshine and rainbows. So you can't win for losing. So that's why you just got to be authentic. So everything I tell you is authentic for me. I'm not going to blow smoke. I'm not going to, post something on your head and tell you it's raining when it's not. I'm just giving you my honest opinion and my honest assessment of the team. Is I think they'll be fine as long as their depth isn't challenged with a bunch of people missing time, because we don't like to say the I word. Guys start getting banged up. This is the NFL. I think they're built to withstand a little bit of attrition in that way, but not a whole bunch of attrition. I think they're going to need all hands on deck in order to do what I think they can do, which is win more than half their games this year. You guys, check this out. We thank you for making Locked On Jaguars your first listen. Now make Locked On Fantasy Football your second listen. Find the intellectual fantasy expert, my man Vinny Iyer is the truth, who brings over 20 years of NFL expertise and unique angles to give you the moves no one else has. Get ready for your fantasy draft with Locked On Fantasy Football. It is also free on all platforms and is wherever you get your podcasts. I had somebody ask me the other day too, man, just a little quick tidbit. Somebody said, that guy Vinny Iyer works for you guys. He's great. I said, yeah. We're kind of a big deal around here at Locked On. But you're a big deal too. We appreciate you. I know 1 or 2 people on social media that don't speak for everybody. That's cool. It gives me a chance to create some content just to sometimes put back in the balance and let everybody know exactly where I stand. I know where you stand, and that's with me every day here on Locked On Jaguars, because it's your team every day. Once again, thank you for making us your first listen. And until tomorrow, you guys continue to take care of each other, and we'll see you.